Jenny, you're playing here in Whitstable off the back of the release of your album Raised by Wolves, which is the second album to come out under your own name. Mm-hmm. And Folk Radio UK recently listed it as one of their best albums of 2015. That must be quite gratifying.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting. And so many of my friends and musicians that I admire were also on that list. It was just great to be included.
Yeah. Well, I deliberately didn't say solo album. I said album under your own name because your ensemble playing on it is just brilliant, I think.
You.
Is solo artist a label that sits comfortably with you, or is it better to say, I've got a band of great musicians of which I'm the captain, so it's got my name?
Yes, it's definitely, I am extremely uncomfortable with the idea of solo. I never play alone on stage. Occasionally we'll do duo shows, but generally the band is 3 to 5 people. Because really, like, for me, music is about the interactions of the musicians on stage and the arrangements. I love arranging. There's only so much arranging you can do when you're just a one person. So yeah, I try to avoid solo, but it's hard because that's become a common term for someone who strikes out on their own. And for us, like, we're never sure. I should have made a band name when I first started, so that people would stop assuming that it was just me. But there's always a band, and I love playing with other people.
Well, when you were in Gruff, you had shall we say, a rotating fourth member who played violin. Is the Jenny Ritter band a fairly set group of musicians, or is it quite a fluid
it's kind of, I would imagine it is like a collective, I think. The people who are playing with me tonight, the electric guitarist and the fiddle player are... I tend to not play without them anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the bass player is one of our many. And it's kind of a rotating cast. Yeah.
I am going to use the term solo album now, just in reference to your first album.
I won't be offended.
Bright Mainland, that came out a few years ago. You'd had several years playing music, playing in bands, but was there an element of that where it felt like starting again, albeit with a greater body of experience behind you? Yeah,
well, it's been interesting because starting on my own, I mean, I'm in my 30s and I've been doing this since I was a teenager, like professionally, and it's been a really interesting transition because when I was in a band for 10 years and we broke up and I went out on my own, I didn't really realize that it was going to be such an adjustment. Like, the adjustment of being the responsible party for everything that happens. Right. That was a bit of a shocker. And then the fact that my name was not known. So while I had, 12 years of experience under my belt, it almost didn't count for anything at all. Yeah. So it's been an interesting kind of realization and an exercise in patience, I think.
Folk Radio, in reviewing your most recent album, ended it by saying, "Why, Jenny, what beautiful songs you have." That's quite an interesting thing, because I wondered whether, with writing these two albums that have come out under your own name, whether you found a shift, particularly in the lyric side of things, to a more personal writing at all, because you are writing effectively for yourself.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, my music is extremely personal. I've never been successful at writing from any point of view other than my own. I really am not into, narrative. I love listening to narrative music. I love listening to ballads and folk songs and all that stuff, but it's just not my style of writing. What I do try to do is, while making it personal, I make it vague enough that people can insert their own feelings and experience into it. Yeah. I was one of 2 writers for my old band, so it was different. It was a really different kind of thing. And yeah, I think in that band I tended to write songs with a lot of we this, we that. Yeah. And now I tend to write a lot of me or you. Yeah.
Your own music aside, I was really interested in reading about setting up of a couple of choirs as well. How did that come about?
It was an interesting thing. I've never been in a choir. I never meant to run a choir. I took a couple years off after my band broke up, and I worked in a coffee shop and contemplated my life. I realized that the thing that I missed the most about playing music was not touring or anything like that, but it was just the well, what I was talking about earlier, the sharing of the music with other musicians.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I really missed singing vocal harmony. So I had these 3 friends who were kind of my best friends at the time. They lived in a house together. And I spent all my time at their house. And one day they asked me if I would teach them to sing vocal harmony, like teach them just what are the basics of this and how do we do it, because they all could, hold a tune and they wanted to know a little more.
Yeah.
I was like, sure, why don't we get together on Sunday night at my house and we'll go over it. I'll make some tea. And instead of 4 people or 3 people showing up, there was 8 people there. I don't know, I guess they invited some of their friends. Yeah. So we had a little session where I had arranged a really simple thing for us to work on. And then we decided we would do it every week. And so the next week, it was 16 people. And again, like, I never told people to bring their friends or anything, and I was just not doing this for money. It was for fun. And then, within a few months, we had to move to a bigger space, and I had 20, 25 people. And then I had a waiting list, and now I have 2 choirs and a 3rd offshoot that one of my choir members has started. Oh, yeah, it's become it's how I make my living when I'm home in Vancouver. Yeah. And it is a job that I just I feel like the whole thing happened so organically, and I just made up this job. I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years now, and I really haven't gotten tired of it. I've never had a job that I haven't gotten tired of before, you know? There's something about it, I'm the boss. I can go away when I want to and go on tour or whatever, so it all works out really well.
Well, I think it's easy to underappreciate the power of a choir because there's a sense of community, confidence, self-expression, and that. And have you noticed that in your own choirs?
Definitely. I mean, these aren't quite community choirs. I don't encourage them to come and go. I encourage them to show up so that we can all work on these things together and improve. And so that means that it's been a lot of the same people week to week for up to 5.5 years, and it's really cool to see. I mean, not just the musical improvement, but the friendships, relationships. I've just had my first wedding of people who met in my choir, and jobs. I've seen people get jobs out of it. It's been just super cool to see all of this happen, and I have to remind myself quite often that it's not all about the music. It's actually very much for them about the community and getting together once a week. And it's very cool. It's so inspiring and really fun.
What sort of material do you sing? What sort of songs do you sing?
We sing whatever I'm into at any given time, because I arrange all the music, so it's got to be something that I'm kind of excited about. So, I mean, it'll go from classic things like Bruce Springsteen or the Talking Heads to, I really like a lot of Canadian artists. So we do things by Joel Plaskett and Kathleen Edwards, and it's absolutely varied. Calling it a rock choir is only just an encompassing term because we do some folk music and just whatever I'm into.
And is it quite a fine juggling act then between the choirs and working out, you're here in Europe for a period now and getting the two to work together?
Yeah.
Or is it falling naturally into...
No, it's a bit of a juggling act. One of my choirs, I've taken on more of a teaching role in the sense that I am letting people in the choir arrange the music themselves as well. So they can bring an arrangement and I'll help them with it if they want, and they can teach it in their own way. We teach by ear, so it's an interesting process. Whereas the other choir, they don't do that. They're more almost my artistic project. And so I have to arrange workshops for them when I go away, which is what I've done now. It's actually an interesting question because I find that when I'm really immersed in choir things in Vancouver, I have a really hard time focusing on my own music. And vice versa. When I'm on the road, the last thing I want to think about is how the heck am I going to come up with a new arrangement for choir this Sunday after I get back. You know?
Well, we're certainly glad that you fitted in Whitstable on your tour this time round.
Me too.
And I hope you have a really good evening this evening. I'm sure we're going to enjoy it.
Very excited.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.